Welcome to the KPMG in Ukraine project, Breaking Glass Ceilings in the Face of Danger. Let me remind our viewers that our program is about the challenging we face after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. With my guest, we collectively seeking answers of the question about the professional growing crisis, like the evolution of the women leadership, inclusivity, diversity, and their role in the corporate culture and society. Today, I'm really pleased to welcome Reджина Meior, Global Head of Clients and Market for KPMG International. I am really excited to have Reджina today as of our special guest, as that's the first time when we are extending our show with international guests. Reджina had a privilege of attending the World Economic Forum in Davos in January as a part of the official KPMG delegation. In addition of the numerous clients conversation on site, she hosted the Women in Leadership panel event. We are eager to hear directly from Reджina today, from her experience, and to discuss the topics that resonated on this year's World Economic Forum agenda. As a global head of clients and markets for KPMG International, Reджina helps KPMG firms achieve their goals and ambitions by developing and strengthening clients' relationship. Reджina has also the 13 years experience in the client-facing role, delivering large-scale business and technology changes. And of course, her responsibility as the business transformation, process redesign, organizational design, change management program, incredible. Reджina is also recognized for her strong advocacy for inclusion, diversity, and especially focusing on the gender equality. Welcome to the show, Reджina. And to kick off our session, I would like ask you and maybe share with our listeners a little bit more about you. Can you please share your journey to current position and your secret to this incredible success at KPMG?
My secrets? I can't give away my secrets, Olena.
Sorry.
Thank you for having me. It's absolutely my privilege to be here and to share with you and the rest of the team. Obviously, Ukraine figures very, very prominently in our hearts and minds, and we do think about what you all are going through every day. And before I grew up, my background is I grew up born and raised in Hawaii. So I never saw snow until I was 18, and I went away to college in upstate New York to a school called Cornell, and then I had the privilege of going to Harvard University in Boston after that. And one of the things that I did when I was at Harvard, I was studying demilitarization. So it was during the Cold War, the height of the Cold War. So Ronald Reagan was president of the United States, and Mikhail Gorbachev was the head of Russia. And I got the chance to visit Kyiv when it was still part of the former Soviet Union. It was 1990, yes, and I went for 3 weeks as part of our Harvard Goes to Kyiv, and I just the people were absolutely amazing. The tours that I went on, the folks that I met, they were really excited about courting U.S. business, and I was just a young person who's a university student. I don't know how I can help, but you could tell that peace was blossoming. People were allowed to worship, so the lines going around the churches was quite astonishing. Chernobyl had not happened that long before, and the people that I was interacting with were dealing with the aftermath. And I was working with a company called Saturn that made satellites, and they wanted to let those channels be used for domestic or international communication and not just military communication. So there's a soft spot in my heart for the area of Kyiv, and I remember that trip very, very prominently. So then I graduated. I went to work as a consultant. I've always been in operations improvement, performance improvement. I spent half of my career at EY, and I like to say the better half of my career at KPMG. I was one of those that was, in the in the aftermath of Enron and WorldCom and the advent of SOX and Sarbanes-Oxley and the rules, Ernst & Young Consulting got sold to Capgemini. Ultimately, I wanted to be back in a partnership, and I joined KPMG, and the rest is history. So I've always been, since 1993, I've been based in Houston, and it's a very, very large energy capital. So I've always specialized in energy, even though growing up in Hawaii, that wasn't what I imagined that I would be doing with my life. So happy to be here and glad to share.
Yeah, thank you for that, Regina. And we need to agree that you will visit Kyiv when the war
yes.
like and
yes,
I will show you the incredible the Kyiv quite changed for a while. I will welcome you to visit Kyiv. Before starting KPMG, you are also were an office in the U.S. Army in Pentagon, and if it's possible, can you share your experience? That's because why I ask that, because 62,000 women now currently in Ukrainian force, they have 5,000 in the front line, and I can't imagine now how they back to their civil life and how they continue their life after the war. And from your experience, when switch from the army to civil profession, how does your experience with army help to progress, to develop the professional career?
Yeah, so I did. Thank you, Olena, for mentioning that, because I did neglect to leave that out. It's a very big part of who I am. I did serve in the U.S. Army. I actually had a scholarship that paid for me to go to school. And as a consequence, I trained while I was at school. So I did all kinds of exciting things. Like I'm airborne qualified, so jumped out of airplanes 5 times. So, got certified at Fort Benning. I trained at Fort Bragg in all manner of munitions. The leadership skills, as well as all of the physical challenges, really caused me to gain confidence and grow as a person. I learned things that, even in terms of tonality and how you use your voice and how you create allies, because I'm not a large person, I'm not a super strong person, but we had lots of things to carry. I was very good at land navigation and using a compass. Some of my colleagues were not, so they would carry my pack while I would steer us through the forest. And so you learn about building coalitions, building allies. So I would say the gifts it gave me in terms of leadership, organization, confidence. I learned that I was a finance officer, so I could even put finance on my resume. There's things like logistics and procurement that you also learned that actually play a role in business. And then reintegration is incredibly important, right? I watched the U.S. make mistakes when the soldiers returned from Vietnam and not effectively reintegrate them into society. And that's become my mission now as I think about veterans initiatives. How do you help folks integrate, and how do we learn the mistakes that at least in the U.S. we made from previous conflicts? So it's a huge part of who I am, Olena, and I'm very, very proud of my service and what I was able to do for my country.
Regina, I can't say how it's I'm impressed. I want to also maybe a little bit change the focus and ask you, one of the key topics in Davos this year for you was Ukraine recovery. And the President Zelensky was one of those who actively promoted the topic of the agenda. And now KPMG Ukraine is actively involved in many rebuilding and recovery projects together with the state authority, international donor funds, embassies, and other KPMG member firms. What were your key takeaways around the topic of Ukraine recovery and investment in the country?
Yeah, so it was fascinating to me to see President Zelensky was there. I didn't actually get to see him, but Bill Thomas did see him, and a few others did spot him around town. And I understand that his location was in the same hotel where we were hosting our events. So we did get stuck in security lines periodically when he was coming in and out. I think Ukraine remains incredibly important to the world, right? So I think there was quite a lot of continued support for the Ukrainian effort. I think Zelensky being there was more than just symbolic. I think he made a very positive difference. So my takeaway was there's still immense support for what you and the Ukraine team and everyone else is trying to do to protect your nation, to protect your way of being, to protect your culture, to fight for your country. Obviously, I support. I'm a patriot myself. And then when can we turn our attention to rebuilding, right? We need to end the conflict, and I think that there's a lot of support for rebuilding, but it's massive. I think that one of the statistics I heard was like 400 billion. And so I know that you locally, as well as, our government and our infrastructure teams globally are really keen to lean in. And I know there are a lot of aid organizations that will definitely be ready to support.
Back to our agenda, about the women leadership. I know that the women leadership was another key focus in Davos this year. You hosted a panel discussion on the ground, and there were a lot of the public discussion in Davos Ukraine House. What were the highlights and insights shared in Davos about the gender equality, women leadership? How does topics progressing, and maybe what most resonate you?
So it was a privilege to host the panel that I hosted. I had a senior executive who's the chief growth officer, chief revenue officer from Meta. And then I had the CFO and president of Salesforce, and then a CEO of a startup company called Zoom, which is creating new ways of getting children to and from school with different models of school buses, like something that in the US has just been the same forever, really creating a new, safer way. Her comment was, you can track your pizza to the second as it's being delivered, but you can't track your child once they get onto a school bus, unless they obviously have a smartphone. But it was really quite good. And we talked about what will AI and other technologies do in the workforce, and is there a unique component of what we as women leaders bring to the table that will make us even more effective and make us even more important given the way technology is going. And what we concluded, and probably a bit biased, is that the things that make us really that are really powerful about women in general, because this will be a generalization, but right, we tend to be the caregivers. If you have children, you're the one that knows their doctor's appointments, their dentist appointments, what shoe size they're wearing, where they have to go for their sporting event, what grade they got on their English paper, the day before. All of that's happening. You're a caregiver of your older parents, you're a caregiver of your children. And so we tend to be perhaps more nurturing, more empathetic, generally speaking. And don't those skills come in really important as technology tends to do maybe more of the transaction processing, more of the mundane, more of the data and fact checking. And you need that emotional intelligence to then take that data set and figure out what kind of decisions you're going to make, what sort of insights you can draw from it. How do you motivate people to go take action on something, right? How do you take care of the whole person? COVID's taught us the importance of well-being and mental health and racial equality, as well as topics that we never used to talk about at work, we now talk about. And so as women leaders, I think that the key takeaway for me is let's lean into the things that make us special. The senior executive from Salesforce, we're of the same vintage. We're both old. And when we were coming up in the system, they were teaching women to behave more like men, right? You get in there and just tell them what to do. And my Army training did suit me well for that. And so we tried to be a lot like men. And then you get called bossy or abrasive, and behaviors that men can do, women can't necessarily do. And we then evolved and said, we need to be true to who we are. It has to be our authentic voice. It has to be the way that we would do it. And then we can be successful. You can be kind, but while also being kind is meaning being straight with somebody, giving them good feedback. It doesn't have to be nice, right? Kind is an important and empathy and authenticity. And so I actually think female leadership is going to come into its own, and this next iteration of women in leaders 3.0, 4.0, whatever generation we're on, it will be even stronger and more powerful for the next generation. And, I wish I was 20 years younger, I can benefit from it, but I'm glad to say I maybe paved the way a little bit.
Thanks, Regina. You know that it's like really sorry, like when I've been like young, it's also like and the mentors with whom I speak with, they mentioned that, okay, if you want to be a leader, you need to be more like the man. You never should like share your emotion. You should like deal in a way how men like that.
Right.
And then now what I can say here, we spoke a lot with women in Ukraine, like the leaders, that like maybe 3 years ago, it was a lot of like, stories related to the new technology. And some of them were really afraid about it, that this new technology may, like, for example, took their job or something like this. But now all of us like thinking that, okay, technology, it's the good tool, like, to like to take some responsibility from some responsibility from our lives, to make our life maybe more easy and to somehow to give to us more time for our family, our children, to do something which we want to do.
Before you change the subject, Olena, this was what the Facebook woman, the woman from Meta, made this point, and it just made me so much more excited about AI, because I just said all of the things I think about for my kids, their schedules, their appointments, their sizes, what they need. She's like, AI is going to do all that for you, like AI for the mom AI, and then you can free your brain to focus on watching your son play baseball or watching your daughter's band concert, right? You're not constantly thinking about what's next, what's next. So it can help us.
Yeah, I hope so. That and also, honestly, Regina, I really believe that it might like develop fastly than other technology, and I believe that for my business life, I'm still will be able to use this new technology, which like bring me opportunity to see what I want to see go when I it's like any place, or see that, I don't know, maybe go to the theater, just because like sometimes I haven't had time to go to the theater, see something interesting, or like read the new books, or it's like a lot of new information, new interesting story which you can like be in. But anyway, I just want to continue the stories. And in Ukraine, when it comes to the gender equality, and we start to discuss it, especially in our executive society, it usually about a fight for women's rights. That's like think that it's more about like women who wants to like the maybe old style feminist story about women's rights. But what does true gender equality mean to you?
Yeah, I think what true gender equality means to me is that every single person is on the same playing field, right? You're not advantaged or disadvantaged because of what you look like or your gender or where you come from, and that you have the opportunity to be successful and the same opportunities that are presented to everyone else. I think there were definite glass ceilings when I was maybe in my 20s, maybe even in my 30s. I don't see them today. I really don't. I think that more and more realization that it's very important to have diversity of thought, and diversity of thought is represented by people that have lived different experiences, and getting all of that together makes for a more powerful overall equation. I think part of the challenge is because it's taken a while to get here, that a lot of women don't necessarily have all the same experiences that their male colleagues may have. So maybe they don't necessarily qualify yet. But I think for my daughter's generation, I think there's going to be equal opportunity going forward. So I think that there's a lot of gender equality that's growing and building. Now, I also get that this is more of an American experience. When I go to different countries, some of the countries in the Far East, for example, it's quite different. I think the world is coming to grips with it at different paces, but I also think that we are making great strides toward better gender equality, and I'm not saying give up the fight, because we got to keep fighting for it, but it's getting better and better.
Thanks. But it also, if I may ask, except the stories in the business, I mean, that does glass ceiling, we also have like the, you know, glass ceiling in the society, because usually in Ukraine, we discuss that in our society, we still have like the stories that you may be just only the one person, the good woman leader, or you might be the good mother. And then it's like still society, I think, push our Ukrainian women to decide between there's two options. And when we start to discuss how we may, for example, change for the next generation this understanding or this this needs to make this decision, because my understanding that it's possible to be the good mother and be at the same time the good leaders, but it's not so many, like, you know, examples in Ukraine. Maybe you will share us your experience if you because I think that the American society is still also like maybe not so in the same stage as we are here in Ukraine, but still, like, I think this type of the stereotype still might be in the US.
Yeah, you know, I'll refer back to the panel at Davos again, and the executive woman that came from Meta, she talked about how in her life, her role models, her grandmother and her mother, but were both career women, and so she never considered that she wouldn't be, right? So she grew up watching, you can be a mom and you can be a career person. And I reflected, I had the same thing. My grandmother and my mother both worked, and my mother had a great career. So I do think you need to see that, I guess, is part of what you're saying, Olena. You need to see more of those role models of people that are successful doing both. And I don't think I really triggered until that conversation in Davos that I too had that same experience. I think of it was of necessity, right? I mean, we couldn't afford for my mother not to work, couldn't afford for my grandmother not to work, and so I maybe dismissed it, but I think that the woman from Meta made a strong point there. I do think business has a role to play, right, in trying to get rid of some of those stereotypes and making it easier for women to go and have children, have babies, and come back to work at a reasonable time without the government mandating what that should be. And us as leaders, like I'm very plain with my team. I'm leaving because my child has an appointment. And the more that we talk about that and make it okay for younger people to do that balancing act, I think that it's definitely improved. It's a long way to go if you're still feeling like you have to make that choice. But yeah, that was definitely how things were in the US decades ago. But we all have to work. Like, you can't
That's
have
what
a
I
house
want to mention, that okay, we are here just to make this choice
necessity.
easier for the next for the other women. Hope that they will take this conversation, and it will be easier for them to do it. I'm also used to talk about the gender quotes with my guests, and we read a couple of research in Ukraine, and what we understand that still, like, the result, it's not like the awful, but still, like, the 100 like the biggest companies in Ukraine have a 78% men hold the chief executive position. And of course, I can help but ask, what is your opinion about the quotes as a tool for gender balances?
I mean, quotas can be, they can play a role. I think sometimes they are important to jumpstart things, right? To set mandates. When you look at the requirement for female representation on boards, that's been used. Like, there's a requirement in California. I think there's a requirement in Europe. You've definitely seen an uptick of women representation on corporate boards. Wouldn't have gotten there, right, without the quota. So I think when used properly, they can play a role. They definitely can have unintended consequences, and they can definitely inspire political or backlash. See that you have to be careful. I use them, myself. I think when at KPMG, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a quota per se, but for any leadership position of a certain caliber within the partnership, there is a requirement that you have to consider at least one person of diverse background, be it gender, be it ethnicity. And I think those things are really important. It's less about a quota and it's more about shining a light on, have you done the best that you possibly can to open this opportunity up to as many qualified people as possible? Because I'm a big believer. Well, I'm not a believer. I'm well aware that there's a thing called unconscious bias, and that you're biased. Like I prefer to hang out with women, right?
Mhm.
My male colleagues probably prefer to hang out with men. Some of them probably prefer to hang out with women, but that's their bias, right? So that you're going to promote and recruit people that look more like you. So I actually have to do the reverse, because I get invited to great events, and so I spread it around my leadership team, and I go, have I invited a male colleague to one of my events? In the panel at Davos, we had 5 or 6 of our KPMG male colleagues that were there attend, and initially I had some of my female colleagues say, well, should we have any men in here? I'm like, I think it's really important for the men to be in here. And I was totally for it. And then every single one of the men afterward came up to me and they go, I learned so much. So we need them to be allies, right? So they have to hear how we feel and what it feels like to be women in these kinds of situations.
Yeah, but I also Regina, I support your idea that the quotes, maybe it's the good story to start with, but I'm also believe that for the company, it's better to have the goals, which support by everybody, because it's when it's a quote, that it will be it might be the story that some people on board might take this quotes as they need to do it, but do not respect. That's what we are talking about in the Ukrainian leadership society, that I would be fair to be on board because I'm have the proper background, the proper knowledge, I'm qualified for this position, and also the best person to be there. That's
Right.
the point which wants to be ensured, but at the same time, I see that sometimes it's not easy to discuss with the executive board members, that they need to have this diversity, because I believe that diversity, not just only about the gender, but different type of the diversity. There are do the business focus more wide. Regina, I want to a little bit discuss about your other role which you have. I know that you continue to be the staunch advocate of veterans and having the serve as a co-founder of KPMG US Veteran Network. During the full-scale war, the numbers of individuals in the unprotected groups in Ukraine has been increased dramatically. I can say not significantly, but dramatically. And I understand that we somehow should navigate this challenges, collaborate between the governments, business, society. But at the same time, in your opinion, what has worked well with the U.S. Veterans Network that Ukraine maybe could also leverage or learn from those veteran initiatives?
Yeah, so I did have the opportunity to co-found the U.S. Veterans Business Resource Group. So, in the U.S. we have the KNOW network, KPMG network of women. We have those of African ancestry. We have Asian and Pacific Islanders. We have Hispanic. We have disabilities. We have LGBTQ plus and Pride. And we didn't have a veterans resource group. And I was asked to co-lead that. Well, Elena, you and I, we started the conversation talking about my experience as a veteran. But before KPMG asked me to develop our veterans network, I never talked about it. I never talked about being in the military. I felt like I hadn't really served because I hadn't actually gone to war. Right? I'm a child of the Cold War. with mutually assured destruction, and went into the reserve. So was fortunate to never have to see active duty combat. And so to me, that's a true veteran, people that are actually fighting for their country. But I was convinced, though, that to tell my story, it would be really meaningful. And so then I've gotten more and more comfortable talking about it. And what I have found is I am able to put a face on everyday people that choose to serve their country. And yes, you may be called upon to go into active duty or combat, and I was prepared to do that. Or, maybe you rode a desk is one of the comments that you use, and you never did have to face it, but you were willing to, and you committed to do it. You signed the paperwork to commit to your country. You had motivation to do it. You trained to do it. And that's really, really important, because we want people to make those choices for our country. Like you all realize how important that is, to have people that are willing to stand up and fight. And if you don't put a face on it, on both the people that choose to sign up and then those people that come back, and make sure they get the hero's welcome that they deserve, and that they get treated as the heroes in society that they are, and that they are enabled to be happy, productive, healthy contributors of society, on the back end of that. So I was really proud to have founded it. We do quite a lot in terms of veteran charitable activities, wounded warriors, homeless veterans, all kinds of things. And then the other piece that I was really proud that we shined a light on is the spouses, right? The men and the women who are married to people that go away, or they lose their mother or their father or their brother or their sister or their uncle or their grandfather. The people that surround the people that are our military members are equally important. So we did quite a lot. We had a number of programs. We took 50 states across the whole of the United States. Everyone knows somebody that served, and unleashing the power of that KPMG universe to lay flags on Memorial Day at the graves of the fallen, to do fundraising, to send care packages at holidays to those that are fighting abroad, to write letters of encouragement, to do scholarships for children of the fallen. Like that, it was so incredibly powerful to me to be able to give back. And the ultimate moment was I was asked to be a keynote speaker at a very large local veterans celebration in Houston, and there were hundreds of people in this room, and there were the guys from World War II that were like walking around with their canes, and I just thought, I have no business standing up on the stage. I'm going to get emotional talking about my experience when these people they've been shot at, right? They've had grenades rolled at them. When I gave my speech and I talked about how I felt like I never served my country, I felt like my country served me, but by telling my story, I'm putting a face on what this looks like and making it open to everybody. And, I sort of ended with God Bless America, and I was crying. I got a standing ovation, Olena, standing ovation. And some of the oldest veterans with their canes walked up, gave me big kisses on both cheeks, and just thanked me for telling that story. And it's validated me. So I talk about it more and more now. Very proud. I'm not in the closet about my military experience. And I think that's going to be important for when your conflict is done and Ukraine wins and all of those young people get to come home. We embrace them, we integrate them, we take care of them, we get them back to work. And if they can't work, we ensure that they're well taken care of and that they feel good about what they did.
Thanks, Reджина, that you share your ideas, because some of them I believe I bring it because it's like the story related to the scholarship for the children of some veterans and the children who lost their fathers or mothers during the conflicts. That's a really interesting story, because we in KPMG Ukraine we have exactly mobilized people who are now not all of them on the front line, but they're in the forces. And of course, we have still our employees, like the women who have their husbands and partners in the forces. That's also big challenges for them to be to to be capable to work, like to be able to sometimes read the emails or respond to email, because it's like a big emotional story. But it also like interesting that you mentioned that your speech, it's important for everybody. It's not just only about what kind of the experience you have, but speak openly. It's also like really important, because it's open the door for the other people. It's like, thanks for that. That's really like emotional story.
Thank you, Olena. I know I get emotional when I talk about it. It was very meaningful. I'm very glad that I learned how to talk about it, and frankly, it was KPMG that encouraged me to do that. So I really thank the firm for that.
Thanks. But I think that when we spoke like emotionally, it means that we're still alive. I can say like that.
True.
Reджина, the time is so fast. And then what I want to say, like, thank you very much, Reджina, for your time and insights. And my final question for you is, what was the best career advice you ever received? And how do you continue to follow it today?
Yeah, so the best piece of advice I was given comes from a dear friend of mine who was a senior executive at ExxonMobil, was one of my clients, and I admire her very, very much. And she always used to say, just bring your most competent and confident self to each and every situation, each and every day. And it's sort of in a nutshell, it talks about your competence will shine through, right? Just believe in that. Like, I do believe that good work is always noticed. If your clients love you and you're delivering and you're serving our people, people will notice. No one can shine your light under a bushel. And then the second part of that is always believe in yourself, right? The confidence part. There's always a voice in the back of your head that says, are you good enough? Are you smart enough? I think that's just to have grace on yourself, be who you are. And then the piece of advice that I have given myself and I have lived by, and I swear by it, is ruthless prioritization, absolute ruthless prioritization. Focus on what you know is the right thing to be doing. Always put your family and yourself first. Work will suck as much of it out of you as they can. And if you're not the one that's saying no, they're not going to say no for you, right? So I prioritized my children first and foremost. I learned to say no very, very early on, which meant I didn't get on a plane at the last minute and, fly to that city because that client or that team felt like they needed me to be there. No, I was at my daughter's karate tournament, right? I mean, I think I'm a happier, I'm a better person, and it didn't affect my career in a negative way. I think it allowed me to focusing on the right things at the right time meant that I was delivering the right results that got noticed by the businesses that I worked for.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for your advice. Thanks that you joined us in this project. And it was really meaningful for me. And I believe will be really meaningful for Ukrainian women, especially considering that you support us and you believed to us. That's really important. And we try to be smart, like strong and brave enough to achieve our goals and to achieve the better results for all of us. Thanks, Reджina.
Thank you, Olena. It's great to be with you.